Welcome to the Ornery Mule Racing Trailhead, and my name is Michelle Hartwig, and I'm your host. And our YouTube channel hosts many shows. We've got the Dirt Trail Running Podcast. We also post videos from our races, and we have a special series with our coaches. And so today is one of our special series with our coaches, and we got Coach Steffenberg with us, and she's from Wisconsin, and she is going to talk to us about winter trail running. Hi, Coach Steph. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Michelle?
Good. So you had a little event this weekend that you got to practice your winter trail running tips on already. So it's got to be fresh in your head. What did you do this weekend?
Well, I sat around at Scuppernong with a bunch of the ladies out there, especially some of the ladies from the Trail Sisters Waukesha group, and they were doing loops, kind of like Frozen Gnome style for the virtual Frozen Gnome, which was really nice. It was kind of like almost an equivalent loop, not quite the equivalent game, but we'd say it comes pretty close.
Yeah. So is it a 5 mile loop or a 10K? Because Frozen Gnome's 10K loop, but I'm thinking Scup's 5. But I could be
It's, I
wrong.
think, like either 5.2 or 5.4. So, but there's an additional, like if you're taking the green loop, which I think most people did, you can do an observational loop, which is it's a tiny little shoot off of the main trail, and it'll add a little bit of distance.
So yeah, that's perfect. Just the one more loop then for the Frozen Gnomers doing the 50K. And one of your coaching athletes, uh, she PR'd her 50K with your help.
Yeah, Kim went out there and she like absolutely destroyed it. All of the winter running, the trails were actually in really great shape, especially with the snow. It wasn't quite icy, it wasn't quite snowy, so you weren't sinking in. So you did have some of that traction. It was a great day.
Well, good. Yeah, it was great seeing the pictures, and I saw Megan had some really cute artwork to up to encourage everybody, and it's super cool to see what everybody's doing during COVID times to still be able to get together in small groups and support one another.
Yeah, it was really great. A lot of people started at different times, so it was definitely something that was pretty spread out.
So yeah, getting on to the winter trail running. So you guys had like what kind of weather for this event that you just got done doing, and how did people prepare for that?
Of the similar weather like leading up to it. So like mid upper 20s, not any fresh snow. So the snow has held off for quite a while, which is nice. Um, but usually when it's a little bit cooler out and you get that kind of like melt, and then a bunch of runners or hikers or snowshoers, what have you, go over the trails, it packs it down and packs it down and packs it down, and it turns it to ice. And so a lot of what runners do is they'll be prepared with, their, micro spikes or what have you to add to the bottom of their shoes for that extra traction. But it was really fortunate that this case, most people didn't really need them, even with the hills. Um, so it was, no wind, so it wasn't really that bad. The sun peeked out, and a lot of people wore kind of just, traditional layering for winter, and everyone's going to be different, but we're getting kind of like to the turn of the season where everyone's kind of like cold adapted enough to know which layers are working for them and which ones not.
Do you have a something to go by for the layers? Like how does somebody, like let's say it's New Year's resolution time, so people are going to start running. So somebody that's not kind of figured it out, a new runner, what would you suggest to them of how to dress for maybe different temperatures?
I think especially in the upper Midwest where we are, if we're holding in kind of like the 20s and that pattern where we're getting kind of snow and a little bit of sun, the sun does help a lot. The wind does not. um, so my best advice is to try to go with different layers at first and see if it makes you too hot, if it makes you too cold over a period of time. I'd say probably about the 20 to 40 minute mark when you're out there, you're kind of figuring out, okay, I could have worn, I could have done without, or I could really use this. So what I would usually start with is like something as a base layer. And what's really popular are, and I have my show and tell because I ran around and got together stuff really fast, is kind of like um, a little bit of a wool base layer. I am really sensitive to wool, so I can't usually do the full on wool base layer. And for those who are sensitive to those materials, I suggest doing maybe a wool blend and experimenting with that. I can deal with about 10 to 15% wool, which does really help. It helps wick away that sweat, because if the sweat sits on you, you're gonna get chilled. Um, you can also go with polyester as well, but it's not as effective. But there's a new material that people are experimenting with, and that is silk. So if you're having problems with wool, you can also try silk. And I know REI has some of those, as far as like your top layer, which is where most of your body heat's coming from. You're going to sweat the most through the top part of your body. So I would recommend a base layer. If you're really kind of nervous about, going out into the cold and being too cold, I would suggest wearing like a hoodie on top of that, or like a thicker layer on top of your base layer, and then maybe a shell over that. So I might have lost that. No. So I typically try to use like, you can hear it, that kind of waterproof, windproof material. And they're usually pretty packable, as you could see. And they're worth your weight in gold, because it's not even just like winter that you could use this. You could use this like all seasons. And just make sure that whatever you get, you can put over something. I can even put this over my water pack if I want to. So it's really useful if you under time constraints or something like that, or just need to carry it around. But yeah, if you start off with those, you can get warmed up even for like veteran runners. You can take it off as soon as you start to feel warm, if you just don't want to, be cold walking out the door. So I do suggest that. I do also suggest gloves. And I know a lot of people, they're like, oh, yes, gloves, they're great. But if it's windy, you're going to really want something a little bit more windproof, or something where you can have your fingers together, because when they're apart, it's more surface area is exposed, and that's going to make your hands colder. So what I like, are, I have these gloves, for instance. They're gloves, but then you can put this little mitten over it, and this is windproof. So that's really nice. So if you get too hot while wearing the gloves, you don't have to really worry about it. Just take it off and vent a little bit. I do recommend the gloves, especially if your extremities tend to get pretty cold. And you can also do the wool trick with, your bra and your underwear and your socks. A lot of people do like doing those things.
So you can get a sports bra that is partially wool as well.
I don't know if they sell ones that are partially wool. I haven't found one yet, but hey, if anybody has seen one, just pass the information along. But I do know they make wool bras.
Okay. Do you have a
Because I
favorite
know
sports bra?
I am hunting. I am I'm an awkward size. Let's say that. I'm pretty long, but I'm not very big. Let's just say that. So I want something that's going to be secure. And I used to do bra fitting as one of my past jobs, and you really should rotate your sports bras every 6 months. And I know no one does that, but they do lose support over time, and even the material, even the elastic ones, will lose their support over time. They break down in the wash. I mean, one of the worst things you can do is put fabric softener on your sports clothes.
Yeah, because what does that do when you put the fabric softener on there?
I mean, most athletic clothing is all like, well, it's all man-made materials, and so they're basically like little polymers. And when you put like fabric softener, it slowly breaks those materials down. It breaks it much faster than, say, cotton.
What about for your? So you talked about your top. So you
Hmm.
talk about a base layer, a jacket, a possible slightly waterproof jacket. I've always loved your jacket. You know that I do. Like, you should probably give a shout out to that brand, because that is a great fitting, fantastic jacket that I've seen work for you in many situations.
Yeah, so I use the Ultra Wasatch jacket, um, and it has like waterproof seams and everything. It has pockets that you can zip, and that's waterproof. And it has like a little hood. I hardly ever use the hood, but like if it starts like pouring down rain, it's really nice. Um, but I really like it because it does go over me, and it doesn't exactly build up too much sweat. But you do have to be careful. Like if you can feel up underneath your jacket, if it's starting to get a little bit moist, maybe you should take that off.
And then you have on my personal favorite jacket,
Yeah, this
actually.
one I don't have a lot of space, but I have the the, the hoodie, and they come in a lot of colors. And I heard you're getting red.
Yes, we're getting red. So we got black, red, green, and blue. So yeah, and you have on the green, so that's the color of green. But yeah, the red looks really sharp, and we're excited about that. But I really like that because it's moisture wicking. It doesn't exactly absorb the water, and it's soft. It's got a pocket. I could throw, a couple things in my pocket.
But it
And
also has these.
yeah, I like that. I use the hood. I am somebody that uses the hood. If I get cold, I'll put the hood up. And I get cold, I get hot. I'm at that menopause age where it changes a lot. So I like the hood. So hot, cold, take care of it.
I mean, runners go through that too. One of my suggestions, if you don't really want to go out cold necessarily, you can do your warm up indoors if you're running from like home or something like that, and get your heart rate up. And if you can get your heart rate up, your body temperature rises, and you'll be a little bit warmer when you head out the door for those first few steps.
Yeah, that's a really great idea, because I know I tend to overdress, and then then you start sweating too much, and then you end up getting cold because you
Yeah,
started
and
out warm.
in general, you'll want to, dress for, 10 to 20 degrees warmer depending on the person. So if it's like 30 degrees, you'll want to dress how you would normally dress at like 50 degrees. Not saying that you're running at 50 degrees, but if you were walking around outside, not really doing much.
Okay. Oh, that's a great rule. What about for pants? Like, what do you suggest for winter running pants? And one thing I should mention is you don't do well, and I know you personally, so I know that you're not really super comfortable with the outdoor cold. So maybe talk a little bit about that so that people understand how important it is that you understand all this and how helpful you are because you've went through it.
Right. I actually have a rather uncommon condition, which is actually an allergy to the cold. So if I get exposed to cold air a little bit too often, I start breaking out. If the skin is exposed, it literally puts hives on me, and my skin just like explodes. Because I tried to run in like 25 degrees in capris, and like the part of me that was like actually covered was just starting to get the prickly redness, but then like the bottom half of me was just like bright red and just full of bumps that just didn't go away for days. Um, so I have to be really careful. I have pretty good circulation though, in my extremities, so I don't usually worry about my hands or feet too much. But I try to make sure that I'm covered, at least my skin is covered, and I usually only go out for short periods of time as well to try to like minimize the exposure, but I do have to take antihistamines. Those tend to work pretty well, but that is so far pretty much the only treatment other than just running on the treadmill, which is also not my favorite thing to do. So I do like, going out. We had like this wonderful rime frost, I think it was, not hoarfrost, but and it was just so pretty. And those are the kind of days that just makes you want to go running through a winter wonderland.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's really made you have to learn, how to cover your body properly, where somebody else might be able to get away with not quite doing it right. And so it's much more important to you.
Hmm.
So what about for your lower half? How do you how do you cover that? What do you suggest for runners?
So I have a my favorite combination. What a lot of people do is they wear, so like they'll have like fleece tights, fleece line tights. So they'll have like the nice fleece inside. They work pretty well. They actually block the wind pretty well. They're not wind blockers by any means, but finding a nice stretchy pair of tights is the most convenient. But I know a lot of like women in particular have a problem keeping like their behind and like thighs warm in the winter. And something you can do for that is wear a quilted skirt. So like kind of like the tech material, it's got like down inside. Some people have had luck with that. My preference is I have the same thing on my bottom as I have on my top, which is a nice base layer. So this is that kind of wool blend. And these are capris because I like to have my knees move. Tights just like work their way down on me. I really don't like it too much. So if I can get the base layer to be capris, I don't feel as restrained.
Okay.
So I'll have these on and I'll put a pair of looser tights or pants over top of that. Fleece does just such a good job of keeping the heat in and keeping the cold out with moderate wind. If you're going for like a windy run or if the wind chill's really dropped the temperatures, you'll probably want to try to find a windproof shell or layer to go on top.
Okay. And what brand was your base layer?
My base layer is Kari Tra, I think is the name of the brand. They sell them at like TJ Maxx as well as online and on their sites and stuff. But I've had pretty good luck finding them a little bit cheaper than retail.
Yeah, that sounds great because I wear I wear a pair of tights underneath of my pants, and they always start to like come down on me. So I really like and I imagine it is from the movement of your knees. So I like that idea of a capri under there.
Yeah, and you're stepping so much higher in the winter too. You know, whether you realize it or not, you're going to be stepping over some snow. You'll be stepping over harder ground if you're not in the snow or you have the mud. But yeah, that and Sierra Trading Post are definitely some places to check out.
Okay, good. And so now we'll get to our feet. So how do you maybe a couple different scenarios like on a snowy day, icy day, running on a road, what different your socks, what do you do?
I don't usually do too much with the sock part of it. A lot of people really do like the wool socks for both summer and winter running. Really helps keep the moisture away. But what I like to do, let's start from like the best scenario. So we're like 40 degrees and it's muddy, right? From that to like maybe 2 or 3 inches of fresh snow, like it's brand new, hasn't been run on, or kind of like that melty, crunchy snow, no ice in sight, right? So what I like to do is I just like to wear a regular pair of trail shoes, which have really grippy bottoms. I do like to look at the tread and make sure that they're kind of like the kind of sticky feeling,
Okay.
I really like them a little bit more aggressive for the winter so that I don't have to use anything else really. So if you're going through something like that, or like even small puddles, a lot of people do like to use waterproof shoes, which a lot of brands carry waterproof shoes. Those are the situations where they would be good. Now, if you're going through like rivers and stuff, or I mean, even in the summer, waterproof shoes really aren't going to do much for you. But with this like kind of winter, kind of half melting thing, it'll keep your feet dry. So
Okay.
that's something that's very popular.
And
So go ahead.
oh no, what were you gonna say next? I know what I was gonna ask, but you look like you're on your way to somewhere.
Well, I'm going my way up.
Okay.
So we're getting deeper, right? So if you're going through like deep snow, might want to just break out like the snowshoes, and you can attach really any shoe to those. Don't try high heels or anything or flip flops, but you know what I mean. But I still use just the regular trail shoe, even in the fresh powder. What I like to do with like deeper fresh powder is just put a gaiter on top, kind of like keeps the snow from coming in, or at least the majority of it. You can't keep everything out, obviously, but this will help keep a lot of the little cold pieces out. I know when I have not worn the gaiters and I've run through fresh snow, that snow just gets in your sock and it starts like building up. And sometimes like if it's a certain type of snow, it'll start piling on your shoelaces and making little balls, and then your shoes get heavy. So the gaiters do help out in that respect. So if we're looking at kind of like late winter where we've had snow, it's kind of like heading towards the end, or we've had a lot of trails that have been run on and packed down, and now it's just ice. You'll really want to check out those spikes. So there's several different brands. Catul, I think, is one of the more popular ones, and they come in like different variations of just kind of like the spike length and aggression of the bottoms. Just kind of look at like what would make you most comfortable. I haven't really taken the dive myself, but I haven't run too much on ice.
Okay. And you can screw your shoes as well.
Mm-hmm. That's a cheap way, but keep in mind it is time consuming.
Yeah.
From what I've heard, it is actually time consuming, and you'll want a shoe with pretty good tread thickness. Like it's recommended that you use kind of like last year's shoes. They're kind of like dead. They don't really have much purpose other than mowing the lawn. Just kind of screw those in.
Yeah. And I'm going to back up just a little bit because Greg Sturdy has a question from our last part. At what temp or wind level do you recommend rain or windproof pants?
I actually would start recommending that at like what not feels like, but I guess I could go with feels like, probably in the 20s for feels like, because I've had a 38-degree day where I don't really need that many layers, but if the wind is cutting through me and I'm sweating, my body temperature is going to just plummet. So I definitely try to keep something on. I know when I did Hellgate, that was the case. I came up like the wrong side of the mountain, and I just got hit by this gust of wind right after hitting an aid station. So I had been sitting there for like a minute, and then so I'd started to cool off, and I got hit. I was like, oh no, I gotta put this jacket on. So I put it on and it was fine, but I'm pretty sure it was starting to feel like it was like in the 20s at that point, just with the wind. But 10 minutes later, it wasn't there. So I just took it back off. But that's like, the whole key to layering.
Yeah, that is really nice. Especially something that zips on and off, that's easy to take off and just tie around your waist real quickly.
Yeah, and that's why I recommend trying to find a jacket that can go over your pack, so that if you are in that situation where you're kind of in between, you don't feel comfortable all the time with it on or off, or couldn't quite decide. And especially people who run ultras, the temperature changes throughout the day and throughout the night. You lose the sunlight, you take the sunlight, the sunlight affects how much warmth you feel as well. But the wind chill definitely will eat through you pretty quickly. And I definitely know gloves have saved me in that situation. I do stay pretty warm with my hands until the wind starts blowing. And it's usually, I don't have a very high tolerance for that.
So you talked about a pack a little bit. I think that's part of winter trail running, like your hydration.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any tips for hydrating in the winter, like gear and maybe what you need to be doing?
Yeah, I was prepared for this. And if you haven't listened to Greg Sturdy's podcast about the vodka, go listen. He has some really great tips for how to handle your water, especially on something like frozen gnome, or not frozen gnome, but like frozen gnome even, but frozen otter, where you're going to be out there long enough. If you're out there 2+ hours, your water can freeze. And it can freeze in various different ways, right? So everyone has their own hydration preferences. A lot of people do like the front bottles. They are quite small. Even though they're held against you, you might have too many layers on for that heat to get to the bottles. So definitely keep that in check, making sure that your hydration is staying liquid. I don't know of anyone who's really had that many problems with the front bottles in the winter, but it is also kind of a newer thing. For the bladder, it usually the main bladder stays pretty warm. At least I've never had any problems with it freezing, but the tube, it's so small, it will freeze very quickly. Probably like, I mean, I've had mine freeze within 20 minutes before. I tend to get away with not adding the vodka to my bladder to where I am just like drinking periodically often enough. And if you use like hot water to start with, at least you can delay the freezing point at least. But yeah, you can add like, I don't know the ratio off the top of my head, but you can add vodka to lower the freezing point of water. It's a scientific thing. So if another cute tip that's not part of this is if you have like an injury in like a joint or something that's like kind of small and you don't want to just put like a bag of ice on it, you can actually use cold vodka because it won't freeze and it'll just kind of sit on top
Oh,
and
interesting.
mold to like whatever injury you have. So that's kind of a cute tip.
Yeah.
So vodka's good to just have around. Um, but yeah, so then you have that. I don't recommend if you're running when it's windy or really cold to have like a handheld bottle, unless you're really confident with how your hand is out in front of you. Because one, your hand's out in front of you. It's all separated when you're holding the bottle. So it's going to be more exposed, and not necessarily that your hydration will freeze, but you will feel kind of the effects of having the hydration in a different place. So just various things that you can try. I mean, you can always just do like short loops and have water in a cooler that keeps it from freezing in your car or wherever you have it.
And then I've heard some people wear their pack under their jacket to keep it from freezing. Have you done that?
I haven't done it, but I don't think I've needed to so far. Knock on wood,
Yeah.
you know. But I typically don't have much of a problem with that. But I usually carry a larger pack of water on me if I'm going pretty far because I don't refuel as often.
And Juan Moran is asking what's your favorite gloves or mittens?
Well, right now I have the ones that I showed off, which are La Sportiva, and I think that's a biking company. I don't quote me on that. I bought these actually at a race in Texas, and I bought them because it was unexpectedly 20 degrees colder than what it was supposed to be. And I found out that I just really liked how these were windproof. And it really saved me because my hands do get hot and I'd rather not be sitting in soggy gloves. So I definitely do like that aspect of them.
And how thin is the bottom is the mitten part of that?
It's pretty thin.
It looks like it, from here.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's pretty thin.
And would that be like a waterproof material that's on there? I'm trying to
It's a,
envision
it's a
what it is.
wicking. I
Okay.
think it's a wicking material, but I've never had the mitten part get wet
Okay.
necessarily, and it is kind of loud. So I don't actually know. I could probably figure that out online. It says they're trail gloves,
Okay.
so that
Yeah,
is the information that I have.
that looks really nice. Yeah, thank you, Juan, for the question. And also on yeah, Greg we just had a great podcast with Greg, and he talks a little bit more about the covering your hands, and he had some issues at his race. So that's a really good podcast to listen to and get some more ideas.
Yeah, I think he talks about the mittens a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, because
And
it's going to be individual to each person, I imagine.
so a lot of people have a lot of problems keeping their extremities warm, especially people with Raynaud's, and generally just some people who have poor circulation. And I would definitely skip the glove, just go with a good mitten, you know. And if you do happen to get warm, then just put them away and just put them back on.
Well, good. So now we've covered our entire body. What about our head? Oh no, we
Yeah,
haven't.
it's like we haven't gotten the head.
Okay.
I was like, the body's part of the head, right? So I personally I like hats. Hats are fun. I have way too many hats. I need more hats. But I like the top of my head to vent because I do release a lot of heat and I don't want to be like sweating bullets. So they do make hats that are fully fleeced inside, and they have wool hats and um, various things. I think the best thing to start out with is just a really thin beanie, like a thin wool beanie. You can add like a hat on top if you want. Like it's a very versatile thing. I just prefer to go like straight out hat, and my hats are typically fleece lined around the headband and then a little bit more open to let a little bit more heat out on top. So I'm keeping this part of my head a little bit warmer and keeping that heat in. So I do like that, and I do that in when it's pretty cold. Otherwise, I'll have like a headband on like this, where I can just like keep my ears warm and I can keep my hair back because that's important to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is a fleece lined headband, and this was made by Junk Headbands, and they're a little bit thicker than their normal headbands. And I've had a lot of luck with this personally.
That's a really cute headband. I like that. So let me look closer at the material of it and the
Let me
thickness.
see if I can do that.
Yeah, and then it kind of goes down a little bit under the ears.
Yeah, so it has that like ear piece to it. So this would be like the front. It comes down a little bit on each side.
And I imagine that's a wicking material.
Mm-hmm. But it is fleecy, so it definitely is a lot warmer. I would not recommend this in the summer at all.
Okay.
And so you can also do the buff, of course, or bluff, or whatever they're calling it, because I know the buff is actually a company.
Yeah.
But you can just like slip it over. You can do the same thing. You can cover your whole head with it if you want. I typically use the buffs around my neck to keep my neck covered, because you don't usually find turtlenecks in the running gear, and it's very 90s, so it's not in the stores necessarily. So I usually use a buff just like around my neck to protect that skin. But you can use it in any way, and there's ways you can use like a full buff. I cut this one in half, just to have like just not a bunch of material bunching up, but like you can turn them inside out and make it so that you can make a makeshift hat out of them. And I actually did that once at an ultra marathon where I'd forgotten my hat, and it got really cold really fast, just in the middle of the race. And then the rain passed and it was over. But you can make a lot of things out of a buff, and including summer wear where you can just wrap it around your wrist, wrap it around your neck with ice, so all seasons, all good.
Yeah, a bag with quite a few buffs or bluffs is a good idea. I've used them as gloves. When I didn't have gloves, I put one on each wrist, covered it up. I've
Mm-hmm.
used it as a lazy water bottle holder, like just tired of holding my water bottle, and I kind of tie it to my hand. I mean, the winter running, lots of running noses. So very important to have that.
If you don't want to wash your jacket so often, use it right here.
Yeah.
But I have the craziest story that I found to work in like a pinch. I've had some training runs and some events where it's kind of like around that 36-degree mark where it's not quite snowing. It could be raining, it could be freezing rain, ice. You're going to get wet, right? You're going to get wet in those temperatures. And I think that is one of the trickiest temperatures to dress for. Especially like you're going to get wet. So it's really about just trying to keep yourself as warm as possible. And I do recommend the wool for that one, or the silk, or what have you. What I found is a little cheap way, anyone can do this, any budget, is use a grocery bag and cut out the plastic at the top and you can put that around your head and put any sort of hat on top of that, and it'll keep that heat in. And oh my goodness, it does so much for the heat of your body. When it's raining, just it just really keeps it in. I've done that quite a few times and had a lot of luck. And then you can just throw it away when you're done, so it's no big deal. But it's something that everyone kind of has access to. So if you're not like a person who has a lot of money laying around to buy all this, like it's expensive. When I moved here, I had to buy so much gear. It took me a good 2 years to even get like a basic amount of stuff that I needed to be outside. And that was before I even knew that I had, what I have as condition. Um, like I didn't even have a winter coat that was heavy enough for. I moved here in February. That was an experience, right? Um, but I'm just saying, like, if you have trouble like affording some of these things, I would definitely go with a really good base layer. And you can use makeshift bags. Like you can, if your arms get cold or something, you can wrap like a little bag around like your arms or something like that. I know for me, this part of my arm gets very cold, or like, you can just play around with different things around your house, even.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And where did you move from that was such a big temperature change?
Southwest Virginia, where usually the average high in winter is 36 to 38 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah, surprise, Wisconsin.
It's so different. It was so different. It wasn't like necessarily a shock. It was just like every time I went outside, I was like, I don't even know what to do. Like, I was at such a loss. I was like, I can't walk in the snow. I have tennis shoes on. Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, my pants get wet. All I had were jeans. I didn't have tights. I didn't have anything like that. So I was just like wandering around aimlessly through all of my clothes, just trying to pick out whatever I had to make it work.
Well, you've nailed it and are doing a great job. Do you have a absolute favorite winter run that you have done that you want to talk about?
Winter run. I think it's just really the condition. Like, I really like being that first person out after a good 3 or 4 inches of snow. Yeah, it's hard, but before the wind gets to the trees or anything, everything's sticking to everything. And do not deny yourself a chance. If it's snowing at night, go run with your headlamp on and see what it's like in Star Wars, because it's really fun. So different times. Like I think each season has its beauty to it, right? And you just got to go out and find it. But I really do like that fresh powder, and like it just makes everywhere new again.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah, last year after Frozen Gnome, the day after Frozen Gnome, I got to go out and it was absolutely beautiful, fresh powder snow that was stuck to all the trees, and I was breaking trail after 400 people had run on a muddy course the day before.
Yeah, I remember the muddy the mud. I remember the mud a lot. And I remember the frozen bridges too. Like another winter tip is that, if you're driving along, you see, the bridge freezes before the road or something like, the little signs that you see driving. Well, remember this the same thing with the bridges that you cross on the trail. They do freeze. They may not look like it, but please be very, very careful.
Yes. So Elizabeth Laura is asking, do you use micro spikes?
I do not use them personally, but I could find use in them. I just haven't made them part of my arsenal yet,
Okay.
because I did do I was on an ultra streak last year where I think it was 13 months of ultras in a row. I think that's what I did. And January was so hard last year because it was like, there's no race. Like I didn't finish Frozen Gnomes. So like I wanted to redeem myself. So I picked a course, and it was part of the Kettle course down near Whitewater going up to Scuppernong. And I made my own 50K. And it was the most different trail in the entire world. And that is the absolute one time I would have needed the spikes, because I went from breaking trail that was knee deep to just places where people had run over constantly with the snowshoes and their own spikes. And it was just flat ice. And I had no traction whatsoever, even with like my really good shoes. So definitely would have slipped some on for those sections. They were, here and there and everywhere, so it would have been well worth to have.
So what I'm hearing is most of the time it's not icy enough that you absolutely have to have it. You can, because you're out on the trails, 5 days a week, aren't? It seems like a lot, anyhow.
Yeah, I really like the trails a little bit better than the roads. The roads I will run on if I need like speed work or I'm running out of time or something. Like I don't have any like daylight left. I need to get something done. I'll do it, but I don't like running on the roads or sidewalks as much because there's black ice. There's ice all times of the year. It's a little bit more dangerous, in my personal opinion, to do that than to go out on the trails where I kind of know what to expect. But I know a lot of people use the spikes on the roads too, just for safety reasons.
Do you have any other? Oh, so Elizabeth says, "Wow, impressive! Best cold weather ultra. That was cool. There is good pictures. You'll have to look her up on Facebook. I remember. Didn't you do that with like Megan or I can't?
She crewed me. I did it by myself.
Okay, yeah, I knew Megan. Well, I suppose I could always guess Megan would be around and be
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I mean, she knew it much more than I did. I kind of like came up with like, this is where I'm going to start on the Ice Age trail. This is where I'm going to end. And then she figured out kind of like the points in between that she could meet me at, because I know I needed someone to be there in case I got in trouble, because that is something that I can't emphasize enough. Like, use like live tracking or something. Let someone know if you're going out, especially if you're going out for a long run. Don't assume that something's not going to happen to you or that someone knows where you're going to be. I really am a really big advocate of, please let someone know where you're going, what your route is, what kind of time you're expecting to be out there. Just in case something does happen, you could fall, like, and it's trail running, right? Like, you could do this at any point in time, but when you're out in the cold, it's not like the summer where you trip and fall and you're like, oh well, I'll just sit here in the heat or something like that. You're not going to die. But when in winter it becomes a lot more dangerous, right? Like, if someone doesn't know where you are, you could sit out there and not be able to get back to the trailhead. So I definitely think that you should let someone know where you're going to be.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Do you got any other winter trail running tips?
Oh yes, so never leave home without chapstick, right? I have thought about DNFing a race because my lips hurt so bad.
Yes.
It got so bad, it got so dry, and when you're sweating and you're sweating salt, it's it, any ultra runner will know that eventually, like, your lips get really dry from just getting dried out from the salt or the sun, just being out in the elements. And winter is a lot harsher, it's a lot drier. And I used Neosporin at an aid station and it didn't do anything. So don't try it. It may look like chapstick, it does not work. So I just highly advise, do not leave home without your chapstick. And definitely other things that you can have around are just like a pair of hot hands, like in your pack, as for like an emergency. They're pretty cheap. I found out today that they do expire. I'm not sure why. I know they're chemicals, but as long as you don't activate them, I'm not quite sure. I mean, maybe they're less effective. I was a chemist in college. I still can't explain it. But I know Greg talked a lot about this on his podcast as well. But fueling as well. These are probably not as good as something like this, which is liquid. So if you're going to find something that's not going to freeze as well. You're probably going to break your teeth on a normal gel. I've had luck with some gummies that are like from the grocery store, like those like little orange slices. They do get a little bit hard, but you can still chew them. I like to have those around just in case too, just as some extra food, and you can just store them in a plastic bag.
Yeah, you use those on your FKT on the North Country Trail.
It's amazing. 3 of those orange slices, I think, don't quote me, I think it's 90 calories or something. And I'm like, that's easy.
Yeah, those are really good. That's a great, 90 and easy to eat because it gets harder, especially in the cold. It gets hard to eat.
Yeah, and I mean, they work in both the summer and winter. They've worked both for me. In the summer, they don't melt. I do like Snickers bars, but you got to have the right temperature to eat a Snickers bar. Like in the summer, they melt, and in the winter, they're just like blocks of ice. So it's really hard to get your fueling right depending on the season.
And I was gonna mention with the chapstick is at the Ornery Mule Racing Trailhead online we have Unicorn Lips lip balm, and that's by Heather Pola. She developed it. It's all natural. She's a lady-owned business. It's so smooth and wonderful. I'll have to get some for you, Steph, to try out. And so you can buy it online. It's a great lip balm, and I agree. Summertime too. Ultras, absolutely lip balm year round. You need to have it on. So important. And
Yeah.
Greg Sturdy's asking if you cover your face with anything, like your exposed
Mhm.
skin. Looks like.
Yeah. So last year, and I think he can contest to this, is that what I was doing the Winter Ultra with him is that my face froze. Like it hurt so bad. Like everything that was exposed for me just hurt, and there's nothing I could do about it. I didn't bring anything, but I looked forever to find a mask. Like I can use a buff a little bit, but it works its way down because I have a smaller head, and I can't find a smaller buff necessarily. I looked everywhere for a mask, and then the pandemic happened. So I guess the good thing that came out of the pandemic is I can wear a mask. So when I wear a mask, it covers like most of my face, and then if I have a hat on, and I know people who do frozen otter have been known to wear goggles, even, I think, to protect their eyes and their corneas, which I've learned is more when you start getting fuzzy eyes, it's because you haven't blinked enough versus your cornea is freezing. But still, goggles seem to help a lot of people. But for me, breathing in the air, it starts to hurt really bad, especially if I start getting my heart rate up. And I've been experimenting with using the masks, and it lets me breathe in more humidified air and warmer air. And I haven't had as many problems since I've been able to find actual masks. Um, so, I wear my mask on the trails just even if not for others, for myself.
That's a good thing. It's always good to find the good things that happened in 2020. So we got these nice masks now. That's a great idea. I haven't tried that. Greg Sturdy. Oh, I thought he was
Hmm.
saying baklava. I'm like,
Yeah,
what's he talking about dessert for? No, no.
I say it all the time. I'm very, very guilty of saying baklava. It looks
It
exactly
looks
like it.
exactly the same. Yeah. So do you have
Yes.
how do we even pronounce it? Balac. I know
I
what
think it's
it is.
balaclava. I don't
Yeah.
know. Everybody just like butcher me online. It's fine. Go ahead. I'm not from here. You can educate me. But yeah, I do actually have one, and I've tried it, but I find that it's a little bit too exposed here. Um, and if it's a little bit too exposed, it starts to grow ice crystals on top, and then it starts rubbing my face. So I do have like kind of the small head, small face problem. So the closer that I can get the masks, the less problems they tend to have. But if I were going out for a long run, I might bring like 2 or 3 of them just to like, because they will condensate, they will eventually freeze, even if they're wicking. I haven't seen any other materials that masks are made out of. So I'm stuck with what I have, but it does help a lot.
And Greg does also talk about like lube on it, like maybe squirrel's nut butter, Vaseline. Do you use any of that?
I use a lot of it, and I tend to forget about it in the winter because if I go out for a short run, like in the winter, nothing really happens. But on the longer runs, I definitely use the Vaseline. The Vaseline I have found is just the cheapest, and I use so much of it that I just go straight through it.
Yeah, it just like creates a layer because you can get like a sunburn or like
Well, I
chafings.
worry about like the wind.
Yeah.
It kind of protects against the elements a little bit more. I have tried it. It works pretty well, and it's waterproof. It's like water resistant. It's hydrophobic. That's the word I'm looking for.
Okay.
So it does help.
Yeah. Well, good. Great job, Greg. Anything else to share for winter trail running tips?
I don't think so, unless somebody has something, especially Greg.
Yeah, we really appreciate all the great questions. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, a lot of people watching, so that's nice. And yeah,
I
you don't
think
need to be shy. Ask away.
Yeah, I think one of the final tips I have is that your nutrition will change in the winter. That you're not going to be as thirsty. Just be conscious that you still need to hydrate. Make sure you're taking that sips. For me, when I wear the bladder in the winter, I'm just like, oh, I need to take a drink so that my hose doesn't freeze. That helps me personally. So it keeps me on more of a schedule of drinking, even if it's just a sip every now and then. Because people are like, well, I'm not thirsty, I shouldn't drink. So you don't need as much water, right? But you still need to hydrate. You're not gonna cramp up like you do in the summer necessarily. But I have had it where I've been like, wow, I didn't drink anything on this run. And for good recovery, you still need to be hydrated.
Yeah, well, very good. Well, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening. What do you think our next Coach's Corner should be? What should we talk about next? Does anybody listening have an idea?
You know what would be fun? It would be fun to hear about people's most entertaining winter workouts.
I like
Like, what do
that.
you change? What do you change about the winter for your workouts? Or like, what do you think can be gained in the winter? I know a lot of things, but you know, that could be something to explore, or like motivation, definitely in the winter.
So we do have a couple people that have chipped in on this. So Jeff Hegelstad, he says this is not winter related, but he wants to know what your next FKT attempt's going to be.
That's a secret.
So Jeff, you're going to have to volunteer to help her in order to find out.
Yes, it would be extremely helpful to have help. It really would be, because the next one is most likely going to be supported. Because I did ask the FKT folks if they would consider a seasonal FKT, and they said that they're not really entertaining that at the moment, which I think is kind of a bummer, because like you could have all these different trails kind of have like their winter version. And I know some of them can be traversed a little bit faster in the winter, because I know I have friends who very much enjoy winter trail running because they don't have to worry about the rocks and roots, especially like in the kettles and stuff. I personally don't care, but you have stuff where there's just so much snow or so much ice that it would be so much harder in winter, but then it wouldn't be a fastest time. That's what they say. But
well,
I
Jeff
think
is
it would
on
be.
board for helping, so we're getting a team together here.
All right.
And so Greg, let's see what he says. Oh, Juan wants to help out too. All right, Juan Moran.
All right.
We want to help. We want to know what Juan's next FKT or FKT will be. He would be fun to
Oh,
crew as
yes.
well. So let's see. So Greg says, do you keep a list written down for your temps and what you wear? I keep mine in my head. It's smarter if you write it down to learn.
Oh, yeah, it's smarter. Like, I know people who have Excel spreadsheets about, like, they'll have a temperature column, they'll have like a feels like column, and maybe like the weather that day, like if it was snowing or sunny or something like that. Because the sun makes a huge difference. I'm not gonna lie. Not even just for morale, but you can feel it. And it's fun being in the Midwest and having sunshine in the winter. I say that. I tend to do trial and error. I try to donate the stuff for me that doesn't work. That's what I do. I've gone through a lot of trial and error, and I'll either sell the stuff really cheap to some people, or I'll donate it. The stuff that doesn't work, that really narrows down what works and what doesn't for me.
Yeah, that's really a great idea. Yeah, if there's anybody that's listening and and needs some more gear and they don't have, maybe reach out and we can try to get like some donation stuff together for them. Especially with COVID, I know it's been a rough year for people, and we want everybody to be able to participate in the sport and be comfortable at it. Because we've all bought stuff that just doesn't work for us, but it'd probably work for somebody else. I've got that too, and I think that's a really great idea, Steph.
Yeah, I really like just passing along things that I haven't used it or I don't have use for anymore, and I don't really like. I'm not going to sell it. I just rather see someone who's getting like new into trail running, for instance, just be able to get some use out of it.
Yeah, that's great. So we still need ideas for our next coach's corner. We haven't had anybody say that yet, so keep sending those out. And we appreciate everybody coming. And I don't want to cut you off, Steph, if there is anything else that you wanted to share.
I'm good.
Okay. So, well, thank you everybody for listening, and and thank you for coming to our first coach's corner. And come back for more. Bye.
Bye.